mountain villages I placed at random on the map. They're also the site of insurgent activity in some of the missions. Let's check out Gregistan, which is just what I called it, named it right after Greg. The largest artificial city I've ever seen. Because, well, it's the only one I've ever really seen. But a lot of these buildings were copy-pasted to easily thrown in and out, checking in and out of the editor and the game itself over and over again. With the exception of the power station, every single building placed here is artificial. This isn't here in the base game. As well as that factory over there. This entire urban area is, as some of those of you who playtested through it know, this is the entire area where Mission 5 takes place, which is, I guess, medium-sized, but complex. I put a lot of small details into this that I didn't really need to, because who the hell's going to check out all this shit flying at 10,000 feet? Yeah, this is being automatically recorded. This little oddball here. He's got this weird Greek camo scheme on that he's not supposed to have, but nonetheless it's there. There's this hidden rebel camp over here that originally people weren't supposed to know about because it would have been critical to the ending of Mission 5. I have to adjust the delay on my mic release here. So for those of you who never got to experience Mission 5, the way this started out was that a small Russian task force, combat recon patrol to be precise, consisting of about 3 BTRs and a Ford Observer Jeep, were investigating an incident where a Russian checkpoint in this town was taken out by local Mujahideen fighters. This checkpoint right here, you can see everyone's dead, everything's knocked out. In fact, I believe it's still triggerable just by flying a helicopter within the vicinity. I don't have my joystick on me right now, so I can't really fly there, but the mission started when a BTR and a single Ford Observer Jeep would roll into the town. After that, they would be shortly engaged by Mujahideen fighters that were all placed within armed housing, which does not spawn here, because they're only set to spawn when the mission is triggered. They would be engaged by infantry forces consisting of small... every single insurgent infantry unit on the Afghan Op was made from a template. 5-man squads based off of their roles in World in Conflict. So a regular infantry squad would have about 3 riflemen, one with a surface-to-air missile like a manpad, and one with an RPG. Whereas an anti-tank team had 2 men with rifles and 3 with RPGs. The BTR would have to get through all this under heavy air support from whatever players showed up. Players had the option of using only helicopters, to using only jets, to using a combination of whatever assets they had. If they felt the situation was desperate enough, then the Combined Arms Commander could drive up artillery within range and use it to help suppress insurgent positions. The BTR would be engaged by an SVBIED, or a car bomb as you will, and it's up to players to recognize, especially if a JTAC player. There's 4 slots for JTAC for people to directly control vehicles on the ground but not have no real command authority. If they could stop the car in time, that's great. They wouldn't lose the BTR. It's not terribly critical, but the immediate objective was to clear out the city and then assist the real objective in the region. The major camp by this power station that is providing power to the primary city in this region, as well as the town itself. The power station is critical because it keeps up the Soviet infrastructure, for one. Secondly, it supplies power to the town itself. So, if the people lose their power, they get pissed off, they're more eager to join the rebels. This would have seen a large-scale engagement of technical vehicles, infantry, even captured armor from the rebels, requiring heavy fire support from the air to stop them from overwhelming the power station. I have several triggers set to fail the mission automatically if the power station was destroyed. After all that was done, the rebel commander would flee along this road. He was marked by a special vehicle that he was driving among this mass convoy of civilian vehicles that spawned in the middle of nowhere. It was an idea, flawed execution in my opinion. If the enemy commander, who was needed to be taken for interrogation, if he died, the mission would have been a failure. Well, actually no, he wasn't supposed to fail the mission if he died, but there was a bug where if he died, it failed the mission automatically for some reason. Lastly, destroying this camp, which would be the origin point of the rebel attack, would then be assaulted and destroyed by a combination of whatever the players had on hand, including 2 reinforcement BTRs and their infantry, which would have had mount and dismount options due to a script. Let's go back out into the mission editor. Originally, the Afghanistan op was meant to comprise about 9 missions in total. By the time the op died, there was only 6 completed, and the 7th was being worked on. The reason the operation died was that at about version 939, I'd saved a few more versions on top ever since then. We'll open up the folder to see how many versions I had. I've deleted most of the older ones. I started saving versions after including scripts to make sure nothing broke in between. But eventually, when we got to about 939, everything kind of just stopped working. I don't know what caused it. It could have been a patch that caused it. It could have been simply overloading the map with objects. But I don't think the latter would have been the case, since when the mission broke and nothing else could be, well, when the mission broke, there's still the same amount of objects in the previous versions of the file, but those ones stopped working as well. Pretty much every single version of the file, except for the very early versions, where only 3 missions were completed, were the ones that had players able to use the operation. In single player, it works perfectly fine, but in multiplayer, players were not able to see static objects at all. A lot of the missions required were heavily dependent on static objects to either enhance the gameplay or as objectives themselves. In some instances, units didn't even show up at all. Mission 2, for example, over here, sees a small Soviet platoon element clearing out a town. Mission 2 would have seen, I think we playtested a few times, would have had the objective of clearing out this town, defending the town after that, sweeping south here to clear out rebels along this whole line, and then finally engaging a bomb factory, covered by heavy air defenses. The static objects in this mission were critical, as everything in the town was critical. Losing too many buildings would have resulted in mission failure. There were buildings over here, and finally the bomb factory itself was also a static object. Mission 1 had static objects required as well. Defending this radio tower, which provided communication to the whole region, was a static object as well. Without it, and without the ability to defend it, the mission would have been impossible to even perform. So we'll jump back into the very start of the mission. Feel free to ask questions at any time. I'm actively reading the chat right now, so... Originally, that plane was supposed to actually physically take off from the runway, but for some reason in multiplayer, it would adjust its spawn location, would not be able to take off. The initial trigger for everything to be set off in this mission is for the plane to be shot down, which originally I had man pads up to that task, but since they were unworkable, they often didn't always get the kill. I placed a chaparral unit there instead to shoot it down that would then despawn after the task was completed. Should see missile streaks coming out pretty soon. That spawns this immediate convoy of fire vehicles, which players on the ground sitting in their SC-25s, MiG-21s, MiG-15s, or whatever, would have seen all these vehicles and convoys rushing to the site of the explosion. Mi-24s would have been taken off, providing early look at the atmosphere for the whole operation. I'm gonna hop in one of the BMPs here. For those curious, yes, I do use the standard transmission in this game. Which is funny, considering I cannot drive standards in real life. So there are some myths regarding the Afghan Op, and I'll be addressing a handful of those. There's not that many. The first myth is that I found a solution to the problem which prevented the op from being played in multiplayer. I never found a solution for it. I tried, tested it over and over again. Every single time there's a new patch throughout 2016, I tested the op again with Tyrannic or whoever was on hand. Nothing ever changed. So I never found a solution to fixing the op. Second myth is that I left right after the Afghan op broke. That's not true. I left in December. Well after that happened. Well after I was working on new ops like the naval op, which was another grand undertaking. Didn't break. I was still working on it by the time I left, actually. Still had a handful of other ops which I was working on, and through one way or another, a lot of them fell apart. There's another myth regarding reasons why I left the SimG community. One of them involves furry drama. That was not the reason I left. I never really cared about the furry drama at all. The actual reason at the time was I was dealing with some clinical issues, some depression, some physiological. At the same time, I was out of work, recently lost my day job, and I kind of just fell into this pit where I didn't feel like I was doing anything. I showed up in the TeamSpeak every single day still throughout December, yet, or maybe it was November. I stopped providing content, stopped making new ops, stopped hosting ops, and all I did was just shitpost day after day. I just shitposted in the chat all day long, and I figured my presence in the TeamSpeak was more of a burden than a benefit, because I was doing nothing but shitposting and sparking drama, so I took it upon myself to exile myself. Eventually I planned to come back after a month, but I just kind of kept staying off, and then I just was gone until about recently. Part of the reason behind that is because I had found a Discord channel with another general for Killing Floor, actually, and I was playing a lot of that game for a while. Got bored of that too, left that Discord full of cancerous weebs anyway, so... But eventually I got back into playing Flashpoint campaigns again, or as some of you know it as Hex Game. Started mapping for it again, started modding for it again, started playing it again, and right now I'm hosting an interactive series about roughly every weekend, where players can help play the game by just relaying orders via the Twitch chat. The concept was proven the first time I did it last weekend, and people seem to enjoy it, so I'll be doing it again sometime this weekend if I have the time to, but I've got a new day job again, so that's going to leave me with a lot of things to get done on the weekend. There's a lot of things I gotta buy, a lot of paperwork to take care of. So I might not have time, but if I do, I will announce about 24 hours in advance. The last note is that War Games General, or WGG, is back, which I'm glad to see, and I'll be regularly posting in there, whether it's content for Flashpoint, content for another game like Steel Beast, which I also enjoy a lot, or just posting BMPs, as I always have. What is even happening? An advanced physics engine. This BMP is uncrewed, and it's meant to be activated by a crew, so you can't drive this thing, operate it, or make any use out of it until that crew arrives, which is triggered by Mission 5, by the way. We have a full platoon of BM-21 grads here, which by the Combined Arms Commander could be called into any target at any time. If a mission was proving too difficult or they just needed to suppress an immediate position, the commander could call for the BM-21 strike. Final notes in the Afghan Op were that this was all to culminate in Mission 9. Mission 9 would have easily been the biggest mission in the entire file, I suppose. Every other mission had led up to Mission 9, and a lot of dialogue was borrowed from World in Conflict for it, as well as some music elements from World in Conflict. It would have seen a full spectrum assault from every single player on the field. No matter whatever mission they were doing, they would have to drop it and participate in this one. Would have needed helicopters, both providing fire support and landing troops. Would have had the Combined Arms Commander sending armies or whatever, and commanding the vehicles personally if he needed to, and relaying JTAC information to the fixed-wing aircraft, which would have been pounding the hell out of rebel positions. Would have seen extensive counterattacks by the rebels, extensive defenses, lots of artillery. I intended it to be very, for lack of a better term, epic. But missions 1 through 8 would have been on a timer of about 2 hours. That's how long it would have taken a convoy that spawned via Mission 1 to reach its destination. And once it reached that destination, which would be half an hour out from reaching the camp that you're supposed to attack in Mission 9, sorry, I got lost for a second. But basically, everyone else would have to drop the mission they're doing. The whole file was a pseudo-dynamic campaign where each mission could be completed individually or failed. You could choose whichever mission you wanted to start at any time. They didn't have to be done in order. The final score would have been awarded towards the end of the game. And the way to count that score would to be measuring all of these BMPs that would spawn in this hangar area here. So this is the mission 1 switch. This BMP is set to only spawn if mission 1 has been completed. All the players in the game would have been notified that the BMP had spawned. Mission 2, Mission 3, Mission 4, Mission 5, Mission 6, Mission 7, Mission 8, and finally Mission 9, the main mission switch, was denoted by a BMP-3. Once that one is spawned, it was a signal that the operation was over. So any team of players who had been playing the op could then count how many BMPs they had towards the end of the mission, and that more or less acted as a scoreboard, showing how much of the operation they had completed and how well they had performed. If, for example, only 5 BMPs had spawned, including the Mission 9 BMP, you did okay. If you only had 2 BMPs, you did pretty bad. If you had all of them, you 100% complete the mission. But in any case, if the BMP-3 did not spawn, if you did not complete Mission 9, that would have been an automatic failure, no matter what had happened. Even if you completed all 8 previous missions, failing Mission 9 would have meant an automatic failure. So I used the boards as rough references to insinuate where these locations were. This was a stand-in for Iran, and this was a stand-in for Pakistan, which were patrolled by their own aircraft. So if anyone got in a MiG or an Su-25 or whatever and strayed too far out of the border, they would have flown into the airspace of either of these countries and would have been immediately engaged by enemy aircraft. In the case of Pakistan, they were sending F-16s at them. In the case of Iran, they were sending F-5s. For an actual air-to-air element of the mission, Mission 3 would have involved players in MiG-15s or MiG-21s, most of MiG-21s, would have been engaging helicopters that were believed to be providing supplies and training and carrying enemy special forces to support the Mujahideen in the area. After that, they would have been engaged by enemy aircraft, as historically did happen. The only F-16 to be downed by a Soviet aircraft in history occurred when a Pakistani F-16 was engaged and destroyed by 2 Soviet MiG-23s. Iranian F-5s were also engaged, if I remember correctly. Those Chinooks are meant to be Iranian. And finally, there are early warning towers all over so that the ground commander could also perform his GCI as the mission was going on, but he would have to juggle that between assisting the players in every other mission if they tried to complete several missions simultaneously. So this is how Gregistan or Mission 5 looks when everything's already spawned in. The way this was set up is that a lot of buildings had Mujahideen infantry actively spawn on top of the buildings, because in an older version they could spawn right on top of them. They would be visible right on top of them. So in many cases the JTAC would have to highlight actual houses and use the reference of buildings, like a water tower here, to inform players of where enemy targets were. That's the two-pronged infantry assault from where enemy supporting fires would be coming from this village and would have to be engaged, and the massive enemy assault would be coming from here as well. Finally taking out this camp was the final objective of Mission 5. Mission 4 was one of the comfier ones, one of the most notable ones, as players would take off from Mama Base. They would fly through this valley of they'd fly through this town, through a valley, which would spawn the Soviet convoy required to start Mission 9. The Mi-8s would fly through this valley, and we have the Gruppa Krovi zone here, which would trigger the only built-in song in the mission, Gruppa Krovi. Flying into that zone triggered the song, while players had a comfy ride through the valleys of Afghanistan and just watching troop movements below them. Following their waypoints, they would have come up to this camp, which was actually a destroyed camp. A rebel ambush had a random chance to spawn. They were also equipped with man pads, I believe. Flying back to report the incident and deliver any captured enemies would have triggered the rest of mission 4, which would lead to this infantry assault on the civilian population in the town, requiring a heavy counterattack delivered from Mama Base itself. Last one I had, I believe, was Mission 6. Mission 6 started, was the only mission that actually started on a timer and wasn't requiring any aircraft to fly into the area to trigger it. The mission would announce itself by mortars falling on the main airbase where players took off and rearmed from. The objective of Mission 6 would to be immediately destroying these mortars, lest the mortars eventually hit something important in the airbase, which could annoyingly kill players on the ground if they didn't deal with it, and destroy other key infrastructure. Mission 7, which I was working on, was somewhat based off of the penultimate mission in World Conflict, where you had to escort a convoy back to Seattle as the Russian forces were retreating out of the United States. Some of you might remember that mission as being very difficult. I found it difficult playing it on very hard difficulty. I was halfway through this when the operation broke. I discovered through playtests that jumping into multiplayer, players could no longer see static objects, they could no longer interact with static objects, which automatically broke most of the missions except for, I think, Mission 4. So I'll reiterate again, I never found a fix for it, and I don't think I'm ever going to. Like, we still could test it again. If anyone's willing to jump in later, just let me know in the Twitch chat if you want me to start a short server. I'm still held to the belief that a patch caused the operation to break, because it wasn't only the latest versions in the map where more static objects had been added had broke. It was all the earlier versions that had also broken, which previously were not before. But that's Soviet-Afghanistan. That's what happened to it. I'll keep this video logged in Twitch, and I suppose I'll crop some of it and then upload it to YouTube later.